Carter, Iguodala, Payton. They're all making progress. They're all going to be slowly integrated back into practices. Their staffs to be determined how they feel after they've been integrated back into practices. Nothing determined.
Just how, I guess, beneficial is it for you guys to have, about a week off before the game one of the finals? What does that do for you guys in the sense of just getting the veteran guys rest and the young guys maybe ready for the bigs?
Yeah, I think, that we gave the guys 2 straight days off, which is almost unheard of, not only in the playoffs, but in the regular season too. So great chance to sort of decompress. Last couple of days, everybody's in today, getting work in. We won't have a formal practice until tomorrow. That'll be obviously the first day we'll know our opponent. So I've said it many times. You go to the finals, it's almost a 2-month journey filled with stress and fatigue and everything else. So if you can get a little bit of a break, it's very meaningful. So hopefully we can, get healthy and have a few days of really good prep and be ready to go on Thursday.
Following up on that, I mean, you guys have home court advantage. You guys don't even have to think about getting on a plane out all the way to the East Coast until next week, I think. Is that an added kind of benefit of you have these days to rest, but then you don't even have to think about getting on a plane for a bit?
I think that's huge. The conference finals were really tiring, even though the series only went 5 games. To play every other day is very difficult. And you factor in the back and forth of a 3.5-hour flight. I think both teams felt that. And I imagine both teams in the East are feeling the same way. So, to be in our own beds, for a week straight, or actually 11, 12 straight days is very helpful. But having said all that, still got to go out and do all the work and get the job done.
So condolences on Liverpool, by the way.
Thank you.
A little off topic. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this before, but when you got this job, you'd never been a coach before. That's probably come up. I have 2 questions. One is, if you hadn't been a coach before, how did you get your inbounds plays?
So when I was a broadcaster, I was preparing to coach, and every time I saw an inbounds play that I liked, I would clip it. I had a video library. And then when I did get the job, hired Alvin Gentry, who had been doing this for a long time, and he had a lot of great stuff. And Alvin was really helpful in that regard. And I think it's not just learning, certain plays, but it's actually drawing them on the board and communicating them and expressing them, and that's a little bit of a process. So that was sort of the way it unfolded for me.
And second, it's obviously been a good fit for your personality, but what was it that made you think coaching would be a good profession for you?
For me?
For you, when you hadn't coached before, you'd been broadcasting, you'd done all the other things. Why coaching?
I really love the interaction in practice. Loved it as a player. Just the collaboration that happens. Did not feel the same way when I was a GM in Phoenix. You don't get that same interaction, that same on-court interaction and emotion. And so I missed that. I knew almost immediately when I became a GM that I wasn't going to do that for long. And I wasn't very good at it either. So I had coaching in the back of my mind for a while. And, just it was something I wanted to do and thought I could be good at.
Steve, all seasons are different, but how would you characterize this one, just from on your level, what you had to deal with? We've talked about the different kind of roster you had, but as you go through it, what was kind of different about this season for you as a coach?
Well, I think we had great hope to start this season and belief, which we didn't really have the previous 2. So it felt like we had a real chance to kind of get back in the fight. And I think our players felt that way too. And it also felt like we had refilled our cups. You know, we after missing the playoffs the last 2 years, I think everyone came into this season really hungry. And you could see the way we started, 18-2. You know, we shot out of the gates. It was great connection in this team, great camaraderie. And so it felt right from the start, but the injuries didn't allow us to really get to where we are now in the regular season. You know, we literally never got our main guys on the floor at the same time until game one of the Denver series. So it was sort of a rocky path to get here, but I felt good about the process and our potential if we could get all of our key guys on the floor.
Steve, you talked earlier about the importance or the value of not getting on a plane for a week. I mean, you look at the numbers, you guys are 9-0 at home, 3-4 on the road in the postseason. How big a deal is it to have home court in this series? And when you look back on the regular season, how did you view it then? I mean, this was very close. Obviously, you and Miami have the same exact record. You won it because you beat them twice. And I think you only had 2 more wins than Boston. I mean, you weren't obsessed with this as the regular season unfolded, but looking back, it worked out, I assume, as you hoped.
Yeah, I mean, the last few weeks of the season, we were kind of struggling to the finish line with the injuries to Draymond and Steph, and we had a couple of tough stretches in there. Fortunately, we had put a bunch of wins in the bank early that gave us the cushion that we needed. I think at the new year, we probably had a 10 or 12 game lead on Dallas in the standings. And by the end of the season, they were a game behind us or something with, a few games left. And we were very conscious of, hanging on to home court, if at all possible. And we were able to finish strongly. I don't remember exactly. I think we won our last 4 games or so. And that helped us maintain that home court in several potential matchups. So it was an important finish to the year for us.
You remember that we don't know if he was Miami or Boston, obviously, but that second win against Miami was without Draymond stuff.
Right. Yeah, and our first one against Miami, they didn't have anybody. They were missing like their entire roster. So this was a weird season in general in the NBA, with COVID and I don't know, maybe coming off the previous season with the bubble. It felt like everybody in the league was kind of swimming upstream in a lot of ways and, kind of a survival of the fittest type thing. So we survived and ultimately, game one against Denver, we were able to have most of our key guys out on the floor and I think we've made steady improvement throughout the postseason.
Steve, obviously with Otto, Andre, and Gary all making progress, it's a little vague, but it is good news. What is just your level of optimism that those guys could potentially make an appearance in the finals? Is that something that you guys are aiming for?
That's what we're aiming for, but we'll have a better feel after the next couple of days of practice. So we'll have an update as we go.
Oh, go ahead. Steve, going back to the bubble season, are you able to feel the way that the last 3 seasons have been sort of compacted together and with a short turnaround times?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's kind of what I was mentioning earlier. This was a weird season for a lot of teams and players. You still had COVID absences, but you had a lot of injuries as well. And so I do feel like in some ways this year was an accumulation, or there was an accumulative effect in terms of what everyone has been through the previous 2 years.
Steve, what did you think of Gabe Kapler's announcement that he's going to sit out the national anthem until further notice? And in a way, does that make you feel no longer like the lone voice in the wilderness in terms of coaches, managers?
I always support any form of peaceful protest. You know, that's what our country is founded on. I think it's great that he is making his own statement. I think everyone has to do it their own way, and that's the way Gabe chose, and I applaud him for it. And I think it's important that all of us take part in this march. You know, this, you know, using that term metaphorically, but also literally. There's a March for Our Lives is going to do another nationwide march in a couple of weeks. I think it's important for everybody to express their frustration, their disgust, their anger, whatever it is, in any way that they deem fitting. So I support everybody's right to demand better from our country.
The fact that he's now joining. Not the only guy out there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I was the only guy out there before. I think what's unique about being in professional sports, especially these days, we really have a platform, and you know, I don't ever feel like everybody has to use that platform. I just feel like if you feel comfortable doing so, then it's important to do so. So I applaud Gabe for, you know, sticking his neck out there, and I'm sure he's going to take a lot of flack for it. But again, my view is peaceful protest is the American way.
After Game 5, Draymond was saying how, what's he saying? He's saying during the season, you guys, the regular season, as you were talking, Ron was asking, you don't chase wins, you chase improvement. And it was all about how it was going to come together at this stage. And
yeah.
In the past, I mean, you guys have had like super successful regular seasons and then not get to the ultimate goal and stuff. Having that perspective, I mean, does that kind of keep your confidence throughout this season that you guys had when you had some ups and downs, saying, as long as it comes together at the right point, look at the past experiences we have, as long as it comes together at this point, that's all that really matters at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, the continuity that we have with our roster, the experience that our core guys have, winning championships, losing them, everything in between, that stuff really matters. And we had a great mentoring system in place this year with all these young guys, you know, playing with our vets who'd seen it all. Andre in particular was just incredible this year and continues to be so, with his counseling and advice, and he does it in a way only Andre can, you know, with humor and sarcasm and cryptic messaging. And so I just think that the way we started the season, the way we ended last season, the way we started this season, our guys felt it, like we can do this. And then to get through the 82, every year there's hurdles, there's adversity, and we had plenty of that, but we had the belief that we needed, that we could, you know, find our way.
Last little thing on the home court. Were you aware when Miami lost and you won that did clinch down the road in the finals if you're going to play any East team that you would have home court? And was there any discussion about the meaning of that at the time?
I was aware because I was looking at all that stuff, you know, in the last few days of the season. But that's one of those things where you just, you know, you kind of shrug your shoulders. You go, well, if that happens, you know, we'd have home court, but you don't give it any thought. I mean, what were the chances of that matchup happening before the playoffs started? You know, you're really so locked in on who's going to be your first round opponent. That's, for me, the final couple of weeks of the regular season. It's all about, you know, who's going to be your first round opponent, what side of the bracket you're going to be on. You don't even dream about, you know, the finals and who you might. But did I look at the standings and figure out, you know, would we have home court against, you know, Miami or Boston or, you know, Philly or Brooklyn? Hell yeah. You know, you're aware of all that stuff.
Steve, a lot of us, I mean, in this country are still reeling from the recent mass shootings. And I'm wondering, you know, at this time, this is when you guys want to be at your best. How have you navigated the past week or couple of weeks here?
We haven't discussed it as a team. And I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that part of it. The shooting obviously in Texas happened the day of our game 4. We had a travel day. We get game 5, after that. It's a weird sort of, balancing act between how horrified we all are and what actually matters. And a basketball game that's really meaningful to us in our profession and our fans and all that stuff. But in comparison, who the hell cares? So I don't really know what the answer is in terms of how to navigate it. You just ultimately just, try to do your job and prepare. But it's impossible to take your mind off of the tragedy, the horror, the devastation of all the families that are forever going to be grieving and forever altered. And so it's a very difficult thing to reconcile.
Steve, you mentioned Andre as an assistant coach of sorts. How would you describe him as a coach, sort of a quasi coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a huge advantage for someone like Andre, who has literally, guarded every single player out on the floor, in every matchup, and to be sitting amongst the players and to be sitting in the locker room, before and after practice. He has access, not just physical access, but emotional access that the coaching staff does not have. And there's frankly a trust factor that exists that can't possibly exist between players and coaches. So that's why the role is so important. He's got a different vantage point. And the guys believe in him so much, and he's just brilliant at demanding and embracing and everything in between. So I think he understands all that too. He understands the power that he holds, and he has used it incredibly effectively all year.
Steve, Draymond seems to have found a groove, not necessarily every game, but I think Thursday he had 17, 9, and 6. How concerned were you when he was out for that extended time that he could go back to being playoff Draymond like this? And what have you seen during the playoffs, just of his demeanor, of his thirst to get back to this level?
Yeah, I mean, when he was out, there was plenty of concern, especially with a back injury. It's different from a sprained ankle or something. So there was concern. But the entire time, Rick and the training staff and Draymond all felt really good about his progress, and they were very patient. And by the time he came back, with a lot of confidence that he'd be fine physically. And that was all that I needed. As long as he was going to be okay physically, I knew exactly what we would get on the court in the playoffs, because we've seen it for, I've seen it for 8 years. And Warriors fans have seen it for, I guess 10. So he's a special player, special person.
How does he transform in the playoffs from your vantage point? What's different about playoff Draymond?
Well, Draymond plays with so much emotion and so much passion. It's impossible to do that for 82 games, to bring the requisite energy and focus. It's exhausting to be Draymond, during a regular season. And there's just going to be times where, he just can't bring the required energy to be his brilliant self. Playoffs, there's time in between games. There's enough breaks. He can be that guy every night.
Steve, is Kevon Looney a better rebounder than he used to be? Has he improved, or is it just a matter of opportunity?
No, he's improved dramatically, and I think Loon would tell you himself that Decky has really helped him this year. They've worked together since training camp. They watch a lot of film together. I think they've worked together to really help Loon understand anticipation. And I know Loon watches a lot of film, and just seems like he's a step ahead of the rest of the guys now. Whereas early in his career, he was just one of the guys who were all jumping together for the ball. Seems like he's half a count ahead now, and that's all it takes.
Is that something you got to have like rebounding potential to build on, or can you kind of do that?
Well, I think he has the size and the strength. He's a lot stronger now than he was 3-4 years ago. He's wedging bodies in the paint. He's getting leverage. And then the experience. It's like anything else you do in life. The more you do something, the more you learn, the more you can take advantage of your knowledge and your wisdom, and the better you can be. So I think I think Loon's improvement is a combination of all that.
Well, you said earlier the finals can be exhausting, and it looks that way from here. I mean, it seems like it'd be all-consuming. News gets through to you, but I just wonder about your days. Do you get enough sleep? Can you get away and watch the soccer game, for example, or is it just day after day after day? There are kind of select days in the playoff run that you get a break. The last couple are a good example. You finish a series, you're waiting for the next one to start. Maybe you come in and have a practice, but there's really no stress, while you're waiting. But the minute that next series finishes, all you can do is start thinking about your opponent and start watching tape, and then, it starts again. So that's my feeling is there's those windows between series. If you happen to have a little more time than your potential opponent and you're waiting, there's a window of relief. And I got a lot of sleep the last 2 days. I played golf a couple of days ago and took a long walk yesterday with my wife and my dog, and had brunch, and it's a wonderful day. So that's those days are probably gone now from tomorrow until the end of the finals. My putting was okay.
Let's go on Zoom. Mark Spears, go ahead.
Steve, just want to ask you about kind of just for say the draft picks that are potentially not first round picks. What could they learn from Draymond Green to go from being a second round pick who came off the bench in summer league to an all-star and one of the greatest defenders in NBA history and a champion?
Well, this league is interesting. The draft is still a crapshoot, no matter how you look at it. And it's not just Draymond. You look at the Miami series. You got undrafted guys on Miami playing big roles. You got Jimmy Butler is a superstar. I think he was the 28th, 29th pick, something like that. There's a lot of different ways to make this league. So I think Draymond's a great example of somebody who's just incredibly smart and passionate and willful. And, if you have the right mindset and you have enough of a skill set to make it to the league, from there, the difference is often in your approach. How competitive are you? How hard are you going to work? That kind of stuff. And Draymond's at the top of the list on all those intangibles.
And also, have you talked to Kapler, and are you two considering maybe sitting out the anthem?
I have not talked to Gabe over the last few days, and it's not something that I've thought about. But as I mentioned earlier, I fully support him and fully support anybody who is peacefully protesting something they feel strongly about. And I highly encourage everyone out there to make their voices heard. Most people don't have a platform, but there's a lot of ways to be part of a movement. And I know March for Our Lives is going to have a nationwide march coming up soon. That's one way of, being involved. People are calling their senators, donating to gun safety, gun violence prevention groups. I think any of those avenues are really great ways to be involved and to express your own opinion as a citizen.
Maria, go ahead.
Hi, Steve. Hope you're well. Going back to basketball, I would like to ask you, what are the takeaways from this year playoffs in which we have seen guys like Andrew Wiggins, Kevin Looney, Jordan Poole stepping up and playing at such great level?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the playoffs are all about, Maria. You have your core group, you have your stars who are, the main reason that you're here at this point, but you have all these important role players who can determine outcomes of games with their performances. So this is how it's supposed to be. Our guys have done a wonderful job of staying ready and shining when their moment came to them.
Perfect. Thank you, Marie. We'll have Kevon Looney and